A good pivot is one that causes you a little bit of mental pain.
What advice then would you give to people who want to try and pivot and they've seen maybe other people pivot? What advice can you give them? Thank you so much, Tobias, for joining me on Tail Talks. Can you just give a quick intro of who you are and who you work for?
Okay, so I'm Tobias.Gould. I'm a Business Innovation Fellow at the Leicester Innovation Hub, which is part of the University of Leicester.
Fantastic. And I think this Tail Talks is going to be really interesting. So when we spoke, it's going to be about pivoting. And Steve Sowerby, when he was on, he talked about empathy maps and business models and how that can help with pivoting. And I think this is going to be interesting because you're going to talk about the tools and techniques that can be used to help pivot. So I think it's going to be really interesting to talk about that. Can you just briefly explain the tools that you're going to use and what we're going to discuss today in this Tail Talks and how they're going to be useful for people?
Okay, so pivoting comes from, that term comes from a tool which is the business model canvas, which if you go to strategizer.com, you can sign up for a range of resources to find out more about what that tool is, how to use it. It's part of the lean management process. So it's not just a tool in itself, it's the middle section really, where you start off with a really good customer observation, then you do some business model canvas work to explore options, and then you want to build, measure and test the different business models that you come up with.
Brilliant. And what are some of the challenges, because I know you've put a presentation together around all of this, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that people are having and how are they using those tools to kind of effectively pivot?
So this tool has been very popular over the last few years. It's gone global, but there's a lot of people that still haven't heard about it. And even when they have, the biggest challenge is not doing business as normal. That people like to build a traditional business plan where they've got one great idea aimed at one great market. And the difference with the business modeling approach is it's far more dynamic. You're more interested, instead of something that is just offering a single service at a single price, you are finding much better ways of delivering value to customers. You're getting partners to deliver value in the business model. You're creating automatically recurring revenue streams. So there's a lot of exciting things that you can do with this approach. And then of course, you really do need to score your business models to see which are the best ones, and then take some forward into a testing phase and measure which ones actually work, which ones get real traction from the customers.
Nice. And what are some of the types of pivots that are most successful using the business model canvas?
Well, I'm particularly interested in pivoting around price, and that's because it gave me the biggest headache to begin with. So I've done quite a bit of work in that area, because we don't normally see price as a way of getting, for example, interaction with the customer. But actually, price can be as dynamic a way of reaching customers and giving them a way to interact and get involved with the product or service as anything else. But the most simple and the most basic is getting people to just think about not what they do and what they want to sell, but think it from the customer's perspective. And that seems really, really simple, but we get so close to our businesses when we're running them that we just can't see the wood for the trees. And sometimes you just need that bit of distance to see it from the customer's point of view and to play around with some ideas to find some better ways of getting what you do to them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And what advice then would you give to people who want to try and pivot and they've seen maybe other people pivot? What advice can you give them to go about using these tools to actually start putting these practices into place?
So you've got to always start with a good customer observation. I think that's the key. And actually, Again, we get used to the market that we're serving, and sometimes a really interesting pivot is to change almost like the opposite of your market, so that a good pivot is one that causes you a little bit of mental pain, that is challenging. You have to scratch your head and think about it, and at first you can't think of any way at all of meeting this new customer's requirements. But those are the best pivots, because after a while they find a much more targeted, value-driven solution. Always start with the great observation at the beginning, do some difficult challenges pivot-wise. Make sure that you do it with friends, make it fun. You've got to have the safe sandpit stage of this. You've got to have a bit of play, and then once you've done your creativity, moving into that testing phase.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And yeah, from what I've experienced with using the business model canvas, it really does allow you to understand, reflect on who your customer is, and then maybe validate whether or not they are your actual customer. And I think that's really useful to be able to use, because you can be going down one avenue and think they're your customer, and then realize, oh, actually, maybe not. Maybe they don't have the types of budgets, or maybe they're not going to get sign off from their directors, or whatever that is. So I think it is definitely a useful tool for that purpose.
Again, and lots of businesses have great customer intelligence. They really do know what their customers are like. So they've got quite a lot of good starting points for creating some new business models.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That makes sense. Is there something you can kind of give people then to end with for how they should go about it? If they're going through difficulties with their business and maybe changing, is there anything you can kind of say to help reassure them with what they might be going through?
So you've got to have a bit of fun, you've got to have a bit of play. Do get in touch with me, and I can share with you some of the key questions that you ask for each of the segments of the canvas, and I can take you through that process.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tobias. I think that's been really insightful and really useful. And yeah, for the people who don't know about business model canvases, I think that's going to be a real insight. So thank you so much for joining us on Tail Talks. And yeah, please do get in touch for anyone who's watching with Tobias, because I think it'd be really useful to have that connection and just talk to someone about it, to be able to start putting that together and pivoting.
Thank you very much, Alex.